Hello everyone, another Wednesday and another two whiskies again with me, Phil. Now this week we move on to part 3 of the 7-week plan of a beginner's guide to whiskey. And this week we're chatting about Campbelltown, which is a very bizarre, very unique area in which whiskey is made. Now Campbelltown itself is a tiny little peninsula that's located at the bottom of Argyll. And if anyone's ever been sort of down Inverary way and all that kind of thing, it's kind of like the last stop on that little kind of fork of Scottish mainland. And then after that, your next stop's Islay. It's kind of like where a lot of ferry ports are. And currently, there are only 3 distilleries that make whiskey in Campbelltown. Most famously, we have Springbank, which I think is the oldest independent Scottish distillery still been around from like 1828, I believe. Very, very old. And they make Springbank, which is a lightly peated double distilled whiskey. They make Longrow, which is a heavily peated double distilled whiskey, which we'll be trying some of here. And then they also make Hazelburn, which was introduced, I think it's sort of like early part of the 2000s, and that is a triple distilled unpeated whiskey. So they've got quite a variety over at Springbank. You also have GlenScotia, which we'll be trying some of here. And they recently have gone under quite a big transformation. They've changed all their packaging, and we'll be trying their double cask. And you also have a distillery called Glengyle, which creates a blended malt whiskey, but they sell single malt under the name of Kilkerran. And they have things that are called the work in progress bottles, and I think they're up to like bottle 11 or 12 or something now. Still yet to try some Kilkerran or some Glengyle, so that's another one to tick off for me. But yeah, Campbelltown. Very, very strange place, and it was mentioned as early, sort of like the 1500s, like the use of the name Campbelltown whiskey, and then up towards, it was a raging success up until towards sort of the 1930s, maybe the 1920s, when we had a little bit of sort of financial issues within the world, and as a result of that, blenders who were using Springbank at the time and other whiskies made in the area. There used to be around 36 distilleries in Campbelltown. Now there's only 3 functioning ones. Blenders, because prior to sort of the 1960s, all Scottish whiskey was typically blended. They kind of decided to not use Springbank because it was deemed as such good quality. It was a bit expensive, so they got rid of it. They started using cheaper alternatives, and as a result, Campbelltown kind of fell off the radar a little bit, although it did used to be known as sort of like the king of whiskey provenances, because so much was made there. Now it's the other way around. Springbank kind of brought things back in sort of like the mid to late 1990s. They picked up a host of awards, and they are still one of the most praised distilleries in all of Scotland. They've won numerous accolades and titles, and they're very good. They make amazing whiskey. But we shall crack on and chat about what we've got going on here. So first we're going to do the GlenScotia. Now GlenScotia is a very odd distillery. This is the first GlenScotia I ever tried. I have tried this previously to this review, and they're very small. They only produce about 750,000 litres a year, which is tiny. Glenfiddich produce around sort of like 15 to 16 million litres. Glenlivet aren't far behind that either. So 750,000, very tiny. And they own, when they take their distillate, so the 100% of the liquid they distill from their stills, they only put into cask 3% of it, which is remarkably low. Macallan make quite a big deal about how they only use 16% of their middle cut, or the ideal section of your distillate, which gives you the greatest amount of ABV to kind of put into cask and mature over a long period of time. But GlenScotia only use 3%, which is, some would see it as a waste, but obviously they're just very, very specific about what works well for them. And the other 97% of the spirit is used to refire the stills and all that kind of thing. It's very green industry, so I don't think it's just thrown away because it's not. So here we have the GlenScotia double cask. This is a fairly new release. It's about £40 a bottle. It is bottled at 46% ABV. It is non-chill filtered, and it doesn't mention anything about natural colour, but I'm probably going to assume it isn't because it looks like a fairly normal colour for something that I assume is sort of around 6 to 10 years old. They mature this in a combination of standard refill American bourbon barrels, and then it's finished in Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. So that instantly should give you a much kind of very sweet, thick, tarry texture. And those bourbon barrels, as you all know, I love them. They should give you that wonderful, soft, exotic note. But let's go in for the smell and see what we can get out of it. It's very perfumed. It's a combination of a lot of different flavours. It smells a little bit like chocolate chips, a little bit shortbread. There's a wonderful bit of spice too that kind of reminds me of just chilies. Like when you're chopping chili and you kind of get that aromatic spice in the air. Raisins, sultanas, those typical big rich sherry notes. The bourbon barrels don't seem to have that much of an influence on it, but PX sherry is a very rich, thick sherry. So if it has been finished, a lot of that big, bold flavour will be present on the nose. There's a little bit of mint, so maybe those bourbon barrels are finding their way through, and it's quite a thick whiskey. You won't be able, I don't know if you'll be able to pick that up on the camera because I'm quite far away, but it's a very thick body. Like it's taken a while to actually fall down the glass. Let's give it a go. It does actually taste a little bit like jalapeno, or just kind of sort of standard green chilies that you can pick up in the supermarket. There's a bold spice about it. There's a little bit of smoke too, which is pleasant. It just kind of gives you a nice kind of lift-off point. A lot of people always describe Campbelltown as kind of like it's the lowlands meets the kind of West Highlands. I mean, it is literally geographically, it's kind of underneath where the lowlands is, and it does have that wonderful kind of salty, smoky style. So it's a little bit savoury. It's not as sweet as the nose would dictate on the palate. There's a bit of orange, but it's kind of like kind of Christmas oranges. When you kind of stick bits of like cinnamon and kind of Christmas orientated spices in there. Kind of reminds me a little bit of that. A little bit of parsley. The three things coming up in my head right now are parsley, coriander and sage. So it's quite a herbaceous product too. That could be the influence of those bourbon barrels, bringing in some of those more kind of, sort of medicinal spice elements. Finish is wonderful. It's gently warming. It's not particularly over the top, which is what I enjoy about it. Yeah, it's just nice, It's a unique distillery. It's a very small distillery, and for about 40 quid a bottle, I like that. That's very interesting. That'd be a good alternative to something like Glendronach 12 or Glenfarclas 10. If you want a little bit of sherry, not a lot, but more spice and more of that kind of unctuousness, exotic hit of jalapeno and chili seeds and that kind of thing. That works very well, so I'm a big fan of that. I quite like that. Tasty. And now we come on to Longrow, and I should have some water, but for some reason I can't figure out where I put my glass. We come on to Longrow. Now, as I said previously in the video, Longrow is made at Springbank Distillery, and it's essentially Springbank, but it is much more heavily peated. And this is called where is it? This is simply called the Longrow Peated. With a shout out to the guys at Master Remote, thank you. And I believe this replaced the Longrow CV, which used to be the introductory bottle. Now, the only other Longrow I've ever tried previous to this was the Longrow 18-year-old, which is by far and away one of the nicest, probably one of the greatest whiskies I've ever come across in my entire life. It's not easy to get. It's about £100-ish a bottle, maybe just over, and it gives you everything you could ever want from a heavily peated old whiskey. It's divine. But this is the first time I've ever tried this. I've never tried the Longrow CV, and I've never tried this before. So we're going to kind of go head in. So all bourbon cask matured. Wonderful kind of clear, present golden colour. Springbank do not chill filter, and they do not add colouring to any of their whiskies. So we know that this is non-chill filtered and it's natural colour. And it's also bottled at 46%. So let's get straight in there and see what's going on. Lemons. Dried lemons. Sea salt. A little bit of dark chocolate. It's super fruity. Like there's a lot of kind of bold, sour citrus fruit on the nose. Lemons, as I've already mentioned, limes, gooseberries, white grapes. There's a little bit of cherry doing the rounds in there as well. It smells a little bit like a lemon drizzle cake. There's not an overly present amount of smoke. It's not a kind of, it's not a Lafroig or a Lagavulin. It doesn't kind of come at you out of nowhere. This is it's quite a subtle product. And again, like the Scotia, it is coating the glass wonderfully. And it's kind of allowing it to naturally fall down there. It smells wonderful. Let's have a taste. Campbelltown in a glass. That is certainly a more typical style of what you would expect from Campbelltown. The GlenScotia does lean more towards a sort of highland style. That is awesome. So I can still taste barley, which is a very important thing to me. This is a non-age statement product. I have no idea how old it is. But the smell, you can obviously get the cask influence and a little bit of the spirit influence too. It's fresh, it's light, it's clean, it's summery. Kind of matches the wonderful weather I've got out here in Manchester today. The taste is so developing. It hits your palate and you get this wealth of oiliness. Like it's really globular. It gets all over your mouth and all over your palate. Hits the back of your tongue beautifully. And then in kind of pushes this delicate wave of smoke. It kind of feels like it's just appears from the side of your cheeks and pulls inwards towards the middle. Followed by that is a beautiful bit of oak spice. That's an awesome whiskey. And it does this in a way which is so gentle. There's no large, I always do this all the time, there's no large kind of, it doesn't do this, the flavour's not like that. It's just a really gentle curve. It starts off soft and a little bit tangy and sour, builds to be spicy, a little bit smoky and kind of savoury, and then just pulls off gently towards the end. Becomes a little bit bittersweet towards the back. Again, a little bit of barley. And to match this Scotia, a little bit of herbaceousness. It's kind of like sweet basil and sort of red peppers. Wow. Considering I've never tried that before, that's genuinely outstanding. I'm not sure the price of it. The sample only cost me about £4, so I'm going to say the bottle probably cost like 40, maybe 45, maybe a little bit more. Let's say 47. Let's say £47-ish. We can double check that later. Scoring. Considering they're both about the same money, the Scotia, I'm going to give that a 7.5 out of 10. So, be above average, very above average, very good whiskey. Certainly worth a look. At 40-ish pounds a bottle, totally worth a try. That thing, I guess a 9. That is good. That is really, 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 really good. Oh, Longrow. They don't make a lot of it a year. I remember the exact figures somewhere. Someone told me about it. It was when me and a few friends opened a bottle of Longrow 18, and we were reading about the distillery, and they only put together an extremely small batch of barrels for annual releases every year. But hopefully this might change it, so you can get a little bit more of it. But that's extraordinary. Longrow Peated, standard bottle. See if you can source that out. GlenScotia too. GlenScotia double cask, very nice as well. So that's Campbelltown. You know, there's not a lot to talk about. Well, no, there is a lot to talk about, but the videos can't be an hour and a half long. It is an ideal of the lowlands. It's got the gentle, soothing, welcoming nature of the lowlands from things like GlenScotia, and then the more you go towards Springbank and Longrow, it brings in that kind of west coast, Oban, Old Pulteney. Well, Old Pulteney's on the east coast, but a little bit of that kind of Oban, Old Pulteney, Clyneleash saltiness and a little bit of waxiness. Awesome whiskies. 7.5 and a 9. I will be now going online to buy a full bottle of that because it's really, really good. So that's Campbelltown. By all means, do a little bit of research yourself, see if you can find any interesting facts, because there's loads of stuff to talk about which I just couldn't fit in the video. You know, do a little bit of research, see if you can find anything out, buy some little samples, see if you can see what you make of them yourselves. And yeah, that is Campbelltown. And if you join me next week, guys, we'll be chatting about the Highlands. And I have one of my favourite bottles of whiskey, one of my favourite standard bottles of whiskey ever, to put up against another one. And yeah, I'll see you next week for the Highlands review. Have a nice Wednesday, guys. I'll see you around.